We know the things we need to do to take care of ourselves. It's fighting human emotion and going logically, I need to do this to become the best version of myself so I can help others.
What's going on, you guys? It's the Ziza Connection, and we're back with familiar face. I don't
Sorta.
know if all of you have seen his face, considering, podcasts has picked up a lot of new listeners and viewers and whatnot in recent time. But Jason Euler, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing very well, Mr. Pine Bipar. Thank you so much for having me on the show again.
Again. Yeah, so what episode number were you again?
I'm number one, baby.
A lot's
And,
changed since then, obviously.
a few things are different. The setup's different.
Right.
The equipment's different. The look and design is a little different. And like we talked very much in the first episode, it's just been cool to watch Ziza become this person and evolve into its current state of being. And even just the ideas you talked about last year to the ideas you're talking about now, those have grown and evolved to better fit what it is actually becoming as a brand.
Yeah. I think it's definitely exemplary of the brand to talk
Mhm.
about it as something that ebbs and flows and grows,
Yeah.
because the ideas that I had back then are not what I'm focused on developing right now, I guess
It's
you could
amazing
say.
what
So,
365 days can do, isn't it?
dude, it's insane.
So what's been the biggest thing you've learned in the last I know we took kind of a unique route to the first episode, and if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough, I got to kind of interview you interviewed me a little bit, and I
Right.
think it was really unique just to our dynamic and friendship outside of this world.
Right.
So what have you learned in a year doing this?
I've learned that I want to find the right way to word this. I'm going to say that the details, the nuances are what make all of the difference.
Mhm.
It's really been the small things that I've done, the little moves that I've made, the tinier decisions I've made that have made all of the difference.
The culmination of all those tiny decisions. It
Right.
wasn't just one or the other, it's the culmination of when they all come together.
Right, 100%.
Mhm.
So, and then also taking leaps of faith is very worth it.
It always is.
As far as, the money I've spent on these cameras, for example, the microphones,
Mhm.
the sign, I put a lot of money into this, but I've continuously gotten really, really amazing feedback, just not just from my guests, but from
Mhm.
people who have viewed the podcast that know me personally, saying like, you put a lot of production value into this. It
Yeah.
looks like something professional that people would want to be a part of. And that's made all the
Absolutely.
difference in getting people on.
Now you're able to acquire because of the
Right.
representation you're doing. And I think it was so cool that you didn't go the route of, you know what, I'm not going to start until I have the cameras. I'm not going to start until
Right.
I have the sign. I'm not going to start until I have the best microphones. Like, I think that's where so many people go wrong starting anything,
Right.
is just not starting.
Right.
And plus when you start, now you get to document that journey of how you've grown, how you've become better. And I think that's something that people can take and relate to because we're all beings of constant growth and change.
Yeah, and again, like we talked about this in the first episode, it was 100% my intention
Mhm.
for Ziza to be something that exemplified that growth
Yeah.
process. Now I had more resources available to me, whether it was having more resources available to me, or the
Mhm.
fact that I was just willing to take the risk and I
Yeah.
was willing to sacrifice certain things to be able to have this studio.
Yeah.
That's a whole conversation in its own, but the value
Mhm.
is undeniable, like
Yeah.
completely undeniable. So definitely made good decisions with that, and I'm really happy with the
And
decisions
there's
I made.
some leaps of faith that aren't always good decisions, and you have to learn from it, but then you get the experience
Right.
that's going to carry you forward into whatever else. So what's the next what's it going to look like a year from now, you think?
A year from
I'd
now,
love to get an early
yeah,
prediction, and then who knows, maybe I'll be here again in 2021 and
I think at least once a year you got to be on. You know what I mean?
yeah, I could do that. I think I could fit it into my schedule.
Um, I think a year from now, Ziza has at least 3 separate weekly segments.
Okay.
The second one we're already working on, and
This is
getting
all recording
started.
too, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
be sitting here if like in a year I'm like, bro, you said.
Trust me, I'll get it done. Don't worry. I think Ziza has a team, and that's something that you and I have talked about a lot,
Mhm.
because in my previous business endeavors and whatnot, having a team didn't necessarily work out to my
Yeah.
advantage. It
And
didn't
on the
work out
flip
well
and
for
on the
me.
flip side, for all my projects, I've thrived and advanced and survived on that. I've never been able to do something like you did here, just solely take it
Right.
on, learn every little aspect. I was always able to learn the basis of the different things, so I
Right.
knew what I was asking people to do. And making sure I wasn't asking them of something I wouldn't do myself. But you're truly going to get to live that when you do have a team, because there's no part in this process you're going to be asking someone to do something that you have not done
that I
yourself.
haven't already touched,
And I
right?
think that's really important.
Yeah, so that was a big thing for me, and to a certain degree, I am a control freak. You know what I mean? So like as far as quality control and things like
hmm
that go, obviously having all of these different things um, in my own hands becomes
Yeah.
difficult because you mitigate a few, or you a few things go over your head. When you
Yeah.
have so many things to keep track of, there's no way to keep track of all of it at the same
Yeah. Our
time. The
brains just don't work
video,
like
the
that.
audio, the editing, everything at the same time. So it'll be nice to have a team a year from now. Hopefully, one,
Yeah.
two people, someone to help with the filming process, and then someone to help
Yeah.
with the social
And,
media and
and imagine
editing.
just the quality that goes up to that when you do
Right.
have an extra few hands. So I think that's like really exciting for you as well.
Yeah. So hopefully 3 segments, hopefully having the team involved, at
hmm
least 2 people, and then I wanna be able to showcase all of this nice stuff and do something
Yeah.
really cool with this. Ziza was supposed to be a clothing brand just like my other companies had been.
And a lot of your passions have stemmed from apparel and clothing. And
Right.
obviously, that's how we met.
Right. I just
Um,
think I talked to Matty Ice about this when he was on the show as
mhm.
well, but I just think clothing is a very difficult business to
It's
be.
very tough in this world.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to put 100% of your effort and time
hmm
towards if you want to be a quality clothing
Yeah,
company.
exactly.
So, kind of making the shift from being a clothing brand into just having merch that's associated
With the
with the
brand.
right
Yeah.
has been a little bit easier, and I'm excited to see kind of where that
A simple
goes.
shift in focus can change so much.
100%,
hmm
100%. So those are kind of the overarching goals, and then I
Yeah.
have a few
But
a
it's
few
funny
hush
how
hush
your just
things.
passion and excitement for apparel, for clothing led
Right.
to a completely different segment that I think really opened up your true passion, which is communication, which
Yeah.
is getting involved with people. Cause I remember, God, every festival we went to early on in our days or whatever I took you, you would, I think you caught like, you're like, oh yeah, I caught like one performance that night. And then, we'd find you off just talking to strangers and making friends for the rest of the night. So I think, wow, what a step for you to take and realize that passion. I think it
Yeah,
was really cool.
and I don't remember what festival it was. I made a cardboard sign that said "Talk to me about anything," and
Oh
I just
God,
walked
yeah.
around the festival with that the whole night. So it's always been in my blood.
Yeah.
Like I think that's not something
A-
that we're
And now
surprised
it
by.
not at all. And now it's just manifested. And it's so funny because like I think not that you had the wrong direction of passion going the apparel and clothing, but it wasn't the true passion. It wasn't
Yeah,
your personal legend. It wasn't what you were like, hey, this is it. But because you kept exploring it and you kept chipping away at that block of merch, apparel, clothing, you actually uncovered the true sculpture that is your passion for communication. And here we are with Ziza.
yeah, and having done this has changed a lot in my life,
hmm
personally as well. So like I made the decision to go back to school,
Yeah.
pursue a higher degree and things of that nature, all because of the conversations that I've had throughout this podcast and with
Yeah.
different people, and like kind of realizing what it is I enjoy doing on a day to day basis, and
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not I want to have a job, quote unquote, in my
hmm
future. I think being able to learn about a career field that
hmm
genuinely does interest me and I can
It's a
actually see
whole
myself
different ball
doing.
game when you have that
Yeah,
genuine interest.
right. And yeah, I don't know. It's been a ride that I wasn't expecting to have this year.
Good.
My anticipation for 2020 coming into it was, I'm gonna get this job. I had a job in a sales environment,
Mhm.
and I was like, I'm gonna get this job. I'm gonna work all year, make my 70 grand. You know what I mean? And just kind of like sit back, relax, hang out. And I lost that job to COVID,
Yeah.
and that stirred everything up.
And I think
So
so many people hit that realization, myself included, being someone who works in the music industry with COVID this year.
right,
And I'm really excited at the end of the 2020 to go, hey, I got my real estate license this year.
right.
Hey, I hired a personal trainer. I dropped 15 pounds and I launched a new business and connect, so I think, by the time people look back on 2020, they'll be like, wow, it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Just needed to get redirected and refocused.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a blessing in disguise for a lot of
Always.
people, and
hmm
people like yourself and myself, excuse me, have found a way to uh view it for what it is right now. I
hmm
think there's gonna be a lot of people in like 2, 3, 4, 5 years who look back on 2020 and they say, that was one of the most formative years of my
Oh,
life. So
absolutely, and I'm right there with you. One other thing I wanted to ask you, I asked, what did you learn from the first year of
right.
Ziza? What's a common theme you've learned through the various amounts of guests you've had on the show? What have you learned from the people you've had on, and what are some just big takeaways from some of those different conversations you've had?
I think more than anything, it's that everyone really is an individual. And while people might have like overarching themes that are
Hmm.
similar as far as how they go about their life,
Of
everyone
course.
really has a very, very, very different outlook on how and why they do what they do. And
Yeah.
that, again, going back to my first answer to any of your questions is what are the nuances, right?
Hmm.
Like, what are the small details that each person focuses on within their own project or their own
Hmm.
business that really sets them apart, right? What is your
Yeah.
focal point? What is it that you really want to pinpoint on and focus on? I know you, for example, you're the start with why person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're a
Always.
huge Simon Sinek guy,
Yes.
and that's like a theme behind everything that you do is
Hmm.
start with why. If there's no why behind the project, then there is no
Then what's
reason.
the purpose? Yeah,
Right.
everyone knows what they do. Few know why they do.
Right.
And that was a idea I've really championed on. Not that it was my own, but I championed it forward and tried to empower the people I was around.
Right.
And one of the hardest branding things I ever had in any business or anything, I had a mentor tell me, "Hey, brand yourself in 2 to 4 words."
Right.
And the at the end of that, I came up with "I empower people."
Right.
And you worked with me on projects and everything, and it's a hard process to learn. But I always thought, how can I empower someone to go achieve what they want to do? And when you focus on empowering someone to get what they want out of life or what they want out of the project or the value, you tend to receive things tenfold.
Right.
But it always starts with what you do for someone else before yourself.
Right. And while that's your methodology behind
Exactly.
operating a business, there are a lot of other people that I've met who
Hmm.
are not like
Of
that.
course.
But it
Yeah.
works for them, and you
Yeah.
can tell that there's still a good intention behind what they're doing.
Exactly. As long as you have that intention,
Right.
and you and I always talk about this. Everyone's like, "Oh,
Intention.
actions speak louder than words." I'm like, "That's
Mm,
great. Intentions speak louder than actions."
100% they do. Yeah.
If you have the intention to go do something, it's already there. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. It's in your character. Just because you chose not to act on it doesn't mean it's not already there.
Right. And I think it's a lot easier to get someone who has intention in the back of their head already to make the actions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
It's
can,
easier to
because
get
you
you
can
to be
influence.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. And you can kind of like probe at them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if it means that much to you, then why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And finding that real true reason behind it.
Right, right, right. Whereas a lot of other people, you can kind of call them out on their bullshit and be like, you don't really have a reason for this. This is why you're
Yeah.
not doing it. Go find something that you're actually interested in
That's the
and
biggest thing. And
go
so
for it.
many people are like, well, I don't know what I'm interested in. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to be. Start trying things. Figure out what you're not. Figure out what you don't like.
Dude,
And,
I couldn't agree more.
we don't see the sculpture until we chip away at all the marble.
100%. And it's worse and worse nowadays because it's like people under the age of 30 who are complaining about the fact that like their life is over because they don't know what they want to do. I'm like, dude, you're like
You're
26.
so early. Yeah. I'm like
Like,
30 is the new 26. Like I'm 27 going on kind of toward that point in age. And, like I love the Gary Vee. Like, I'm just getting started,
dude,
like
yeah.
I'm
Of
early in the
course.
race. And, my favorite thing when people throw at me, I'm like, the CEO of Walmart started when he was 44. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah. The guy who owns you did you ever watch the Founder movie
Oh
about
yeah, yeah,
McDonald's?
Ray
Same
Kroc.
thing.
Yeah,
Same
he's in
thing.
his 50s, I think.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
no, it's never too late. It's always just too late to start.
Right, right. And I mean, you can dwell on the fact that you should have started 10 years earlier as much as you want, but that's not going to change the fact that you can't turn back time
Yeah,
and try again at 20 years old. You might as well just start now because those
yeah,
days are going to pass one way or another.
100%. I think that was the biggest thing when I made my first business jump into entertainment and music world was I'm like, if I fail in my 20s, like, my worst reality, like when I risked every penny I owned on Octave at one point, as you know.
Yep.
And I had to sit there and realize if this show fails, I'm moving home with mom. And I had to think what's the worst possible thing that could happen if I just go for it.
Free meals from Darcy?
Yeah, so I would go home. I'd have a mom that's live at my old house. I'd have electricity, running water, and like my mom there to cook.
Right.
And I would be living better than probably 80% of the world at
Right.
that point still.
Right.
So having that perspective, I'm like, it's like an insult to not go for it almost to everyone else because I do have this privilege. I do have this opportunity and I'm fortunate, I was born into it
Right.
and I need to go take advantage of it. And, born into it, I'm not saying I had a bunch of shit handed to me or anything like that. I come from a very humble middle class family out of Flagstaff.
And you worked your ass off for a lot of the stuff you have.
And
So
I had to bust my ass, still. And when you do have, those opportunities, it's a shame to not try and take advantage of them.
right.
And I think the biggest thing I see in America and just our generation in general is they don't have that realization of that, hey, you already won the lottery being born.
Right.
Now you were born in America. Hey, you're born into a pretty good situation. It's kind of a slap in the face to everyone born across the world if you don't go make the most of it almost.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more there. And even for my situation, right? My parents came here with absolutely nothing,
Nothing.
and
Yeah.
they are the definition of the American dream.
Exactly. And I love that story.
And while I grew up having a lot of things handed to me, and I had a
Hmm.
lot of resources, and I grew up in a better situation than let's say 99.5% of the
Yeah.
world. And to me, the mentality was more so, if I have this much resource available to me,
Hmm.
it would be disrespectful of me not to use those
Hmm.
resources for something that I really truly believe in, and
Yeah.
something that I think is good for the world in general.
Yeah, Robert Herjavec talks about that on Shark Tank. He's like, they're like, why did you work so hard when you came to America? And he goes, well, my parents literally sacrificed
The
everything to get
everything,
here, and if
right.
I didn't take that and champion it forward to make the most of it, then what they did was in vain. And he's like,
Right.
I couldn't live with myself for that. And I think it's just, again, it's about your perspective of what motivates you or does it. So as
100%.
long as you find that perspective that puts you in the proper mindset paired with good intention, then you can go really pioneer some things.
Right. And again, it's very similar to my mindset here. It's like, my parents sacrificed everything for me to be able to have the opportunity to do whatever I want, to live
Hmm.
comfortably. And I can either take that resource, all of those resources and
Hmm.
that opportunity, and go buy myself, a nice car on my parents' dime, and spend money on clothes and this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
Or I can spend the money on having a nice studio, and
Yeah.
building something that I feel will really bring value to other people in the future. And that's what's important at the end of the day.
And you always nailed it. And that's always been your primary. I always start with why I think your big thing is you always start with quality and value. And that's why you talk about getting Ziza to the point where it was the nuances, it was the fine tuned quality, because then you can give the maximum amount of value
Right.
to the people you're trying to connect with.
And that's a really good point I want to touch on. There are a lot of people that I've had on the podcast
Hmm.
who do really, 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 really great work. They
Hmm.
are like incredible musicians. They have great businesses.
Whatever they're
They
talented
Whatever
in.
they're
Yeah.
talented in, right? But they're not at a stage where they're recognized for the talents that they have.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time, they'll have opportunities to go on different podcasts and interviews and things like that, but they're not
Hmm.
quality to the point where someone who doesn't know who they are is going to click on and take a look.
Hmm.
To some degree or another, that initial quality has to be there. And I like being able to give people who have talents that aren't being recognized a
Yeah.
place like this to showcase and kind of like talk about what they are,
Yeah.
that has the initial quality
And even
that
if
a
they
stranger
capture
might
one new
click
set of
on.
ears that day,
Right.
then it's all beneficial. And when you go with the micro approach instead of, oh, I need 10,000 new followers and I
Right.
need my business to get 100,000 likes on YouTube or whatever it might be. When you go, oh man, if I do this and one person picks it up today, and that's something, for my artists I manage, I always press upon. And it was the same mindset when I was playing baseball. I'm like, there could be one scout in the stand today that could change my entire life
Yep.
if I go out and I hustle and play hard and have a good game. And, I'm like, I tell that, a lot of my artists like, well, I don't know if we should take that gig or do that podcast or whatever. I'm like, dude, if one person there finds out about you, then it was worth it. And you,
Yeah.
you have to kind of go with that micro approach.
Right. And it's kind of playing to Kevin Kelly's, 1,000 true fans. You
Yep.
know what I mean? So if you're producing a song or doing whatever you're doing it for
Hmm.
one person at a time,
Yeah.
intentionally at one person. It's kind of how they talk about, doing public speaking.
Yeah.
Don't talk to the crowd. Talk to one individual in the
Individual.
crowd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really capture that person.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the crowd will follow.
Because you're going with the right intention and the right energy to
Right.
match that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a crazy ride, and I've learned so much because you're gonna disagree with me on saying this, and I already know you are. But when I was 18, 19 years old, like you met me right when I
Yeah,
turned
of course.
19. When I was 18, 19, even going into 20 years old, I was still kind of superficial, right? Like I was still doing things that were in not necessarily with the right intentions. There was still like a lot of personal traumas and problems that I had to deal with.
I think it was that. I think it was ultimately the culture you surrounded yourself with at the time, though,
Yeah,
and you
that's
were
true.
still
That's true.
fine tuning that, and 18 to 22 years old, especially college, that's the hardest point to figure out, where do I belong?
Who
What
am
what
I? Yeah.
individuals am I gonna not necessarily who am I? Like I said, I think everyone struggles with that problem.
Mm,
Again, I think it's easier to figure out who you're not, and
mm,
when people have that shift in paradigm is when they really start to uncover that.
right.
But I think the biggest thing people struggle, and I struggled with it in my early 20s, was who am I going to surround myself with?
Yeah.
And, I always just use the cliche quote, until the weeds are cut, the roses can't grow.
Right.
And it took me a long time to start realizing, hey, this person is not contributing to they're depositing from my energy. They're withdrawal or they're
They're
withdrawing.
withdrawing from
Yeah,
your
sorry, they're
energy.
withdrawing from energy.
Right.
They're not depositing anything and making me better.
Right.
And, even though I try to fill myself up and pour into others' cups, the more I had people take but not replenish, I started to realize that's not a winning formula.
Yeah.
And I think at about 25 was when I really set in, and I'm like, all right, if someone does not serve me to grow to being the best version of myself,
Just give them the boot.
then they just can't be there. And it's
Yeah.
not, hey, there's nothing wrong with that person. You know, I have some friends, I have some really good friendships I've cut off. I wish them all the best, and I'm always cheering for them. You know, just because we're not eating at the same table doesn't mean I can't root for you.
Right.
But I had to shrink my table a bit.
Right. I see you in the restaurant on the other side having your meal too. I'm happy
Yeah,
for you.
good for you. Eat
Yeah.
up. You
Right.
know,
Eat up.
I hope you eat.
For sure. There's
Um,
even people in my lifetime in the last year,
yeah.
who've kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and these are close friends. And
Mhm.
still to this day, I'm just like, dude, I wish all the best for you. I really hope you get everything that you want in life,
Yeah.
and hopefully it makes you happy.
Yeah,
I,
I mean, holding bitterness or
it's
anything,
not going to do
it
shit for
doesn't do
you.
shit for you,
Yeah.
you know. And it kind of going back, I kind of we touched on this. It's kind of really just controlling the things that are in your circle of influence. I can control who I spend my time with. I can control what I consume daily through social media and news. I can consume my diet. You know,
Right.
what am I spending my time doing? And just asking yourself those hard questions. And when you start to see that, hey, these people are pulling me away from these things, it makes those questions a little easier to answer.
Yeah.
Once you do have that realization.
Right. Right. It's very simple too. I talked about this with Ken in our
Mhm.
most recent episode. It's like life is very simple when it comes down to it, and it comes down to like, really buckling down on the things that
Mhm.
are going to be good for you
Of
in the
course.
long run. It's
Yeah.
really, really, really simple. The difficult part is being a practitioner of those things.
Well, and that's when, because we're defying our human emotion, we're defying our
Right.
human nature.
Right.
You know, to be logical and rational is to defy what we are as humans. Humans are creatures of emotion.
Emotion for
We're
sure.
not creatures of logic.
Hmm.
You know, and it's easier for us to want to go make that emotional decision, to make the easy choice, to make the quick one, because we're going to get the instant gratification. And our mind is hardwired that way to go after those things.
Right.
And when we go against the grain, hey, I'm going to do something for someone besides myself. Hey, I'm going to go and invest into myself here because it's going to suck right now, but you know, in a while it might be better. Those are the tough decisions, but that's where we experience growth.
Yeah. So you have a hustle theory. What is this?
Hustle theory, you know, one thing to come out of 2020. I hit a really tough time, as so many did. You know, I lost my entire workflow industry, sponsorship contracts, touring gigs with all my artists I manage. And I'm like, okay, well, what does hard work really mean to me now? I don't have any. I just worked. I sacrificed everything to get into the music industry. I sacrificed everything to become a manager. Sacrificed everything to leave corporate America and go do the music thing full time. And within a matter of a week, it all got stripped away.
Yep.
We canceled 121 events in 2020 that we had either on sale or set to go on sale. We were projected to do probably over 300 events this year at Relentless Beats. So everything's gone. Okay, so now what does hard work mean to me? And I really had to come up with this theory of, okay, well, what am I working for still? And I thought, you know, I looked at it this way: the music industry's down, as are so many other industries. I'm gonna go invest while the stock's low.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sign 3 new artists this year. Did that. I'm gonna promote tracks this year. I'm gonna start an online mentorship platform for music industry. I'm gonna launch that this year. And so it just really kind of stemmed from, what does hard work mean to me?
Right.
And you taught me this about apparel. Actually, you said, you know, when you went to go launch your first clothing brand, you couldn't find the clothes that represented you or what you thought you did. So you went and made it.
Right.
Very much the same mindset. I just didn't think there was anything out there, or brand or identity, that represented what I believe in work ethic.
Right.
And I wanted to create something like that. And it's a very grassroots take on this. You know, I'm not really marketing it. Close friends know about it. They're buying it. I got some people wearing it, and I really just kind of wanted to evolve that way. It's a very minimal side project in the grand scheme of what I do. Like you said, to really blow up an apparel, like it takes an absurd amount of focus and 100%.
So, where do you see yourself in another 5 years? What is your main focus? Because from a friend's perspective,
Mhm.
I see you really, really honing in and taking a leap forward with your management side. I really
Yeah.
feel like that's something you enjoy doing.
I
Where do you see yourself, and what are you going to focus on over the course of the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, management's always been the passion, and it drives me. And like, I think it just comes through naturally in my work, like
Hmm.
without even trying. It just, like, you know, I'll start to work on a few other projects, and it always, like, just naturally, my North Star just points me back to that direction.
Hmm.
And it's because the fulfillment I get from it at the
Right.
end of the day. You know, but I took that upon, okay, well, I'm helping those people, helping the artists I manage. You and I volunteer for a program called Teach One to Lead One, where, you know, we're doing youth mentorship every week,
Yep.
education, mentorship, something I'm also very passionate about. And those two passions kind of merged into Connect this year, which is a online mentorship platform. You can go talk to touring artists, promoters, managers, agents, record executive, lawyers, you name it. And you can get direct feedback, one-on-one advice, one-on-one production lessons. And I think my sphere of this is really just going to be how many other people can I help through mentorship,
Mm,
education, and leading. Management ties into that, education ties into that, mentorship ties into that. And I really expect that to be what's going to be filling the next 5 years of my life. And I think that'll transfer over into everything I'm doing at Relentless.
right.
As you know, I expect the music industry when it comes back to absolutely just boom.
Yeah.
We're heading for a big one. I think everyone's going to want to get out, get to events, and not take for granted the things we seemingly took for granted. And going to build a team around some of the projects I'm going to be working on at Relentless. And that's a big goal, is to start building a team around me there, and really expanding that. And that's going to be tying right into mentorship, leadership, and education, because I'm going to be empowering the people around me to take these projects, passions, and ideas and push them forward. And again, going back to my 2 to 4 word branding, is I empower people.
Right.
So I expect the next 5 years to be very much of that across my projects.
Just aligned with that ideology.
I'm just going to double down and invest my time and effort solely into people. The
Right.
projects are the projects, and I'm very passionate, and I love a lot of these projects, and I'm very diversified in them. You know, I built 10 stories tall with Octave. You know, I didn't try to go 10 stories wide trying to do Octave, Connect, Moon Landing, all this stuff. I built one core pillar of my life,
Right.
and through that I was able to get to Relentless Beats, where I was able to create a platform to say, now I have another platform. I can attract other people to this platform because, you know, it's noticeable, and I can take these other ideas and passions, and I can empower other people to find the same passions for these ideas that I have.
Right.
And again, that goes to the core belief that Simon Sinek talks about, is the goal is not to be in business with people who believe or want what you want. The goal is to be in business with people who believe what you believe. So the more I can just say, hey, I believe in mentorship, and I believe in education, and I believe in empowering my artists to go on and chase their dreams, you know, the more people I'm going to start to attract to my cause. And even 2020, I've been lucky enough to have 2 people come on to help me on the artist projects, with Bree Olinger, who's been just a rock star to work with this year. You've met Bree.
Super dope
And
girl.
I just brought Tanner Thompson on to help me out with some projects on the management side. And then they're both also helping out with Moon Landing,
Right.
the media company I have a stake in.
A hand in. Yeah. You kind of
Yeah.
started that, and then that was moved over to a close friend and someone who
Yeah.
helped you with Octave,
hmm
someone you trust, and he's really taken
He's
off with
taken
it,
it
dude.
and
He's
run with it.
killing it.
We just hit our 300th article in the last year. In
Dude,
1 year, my original goal with him was to do 60. We have
crushing
a
it.
team of, like, I think we're at 18 now on that team total, and he's operating and owning it. And I'm really kind of there as an advisory consulting role, and really just using my network as well to make sure these kids are getting in touch with the top record labels, getting in touch with top artists for interviews. And I think that's a business model and plan that we have in place when festivals do come back, that is also really going to be able to monetize and really get moving as well. So that,
Yeah.
again, that's another one I invested into a lot this year. We did a virtual live stream for Feeding America, raised some money there. We got another live stream coming up next month here in December. And, you know, we got some new graphic designers, video content creators, and just some great people from the dance music community across the country right now.
Right.
So that project's really awesome, and it's been just incredible to see what Nick Lamoureux's done. You know, what he learned from working with me on Octave, and how he's really gone to take a little bits of that, but employ his own leadership style.
Right.
And now it's just about empowering Nick to take on and champion this idea to the rest of the team.
Right.
And again, that's, you know, hey, it stretches me a little thin, but I can empower someone to go champion forward an idea. And Nick's really done that this year.
And I think that was that came at the perfect time
Mhm.
too. It was a transitionary project for you, especially
Yes.
during this year. And it gave you something to put your focus on, which was
hmm
really, really important for you. Because I could see once RB went away and COVID hit and all those
Yeah.
things, you were really, really struggling to like
Oh,
put your time and energy somewhere. You look like a lost kid,
I was
quite
no,
honestly.
absolutely, and I was, and I definitely had a month there where I'm like, okay, and I
You're like,
think
oh,
I fell into the trap, and I was just kind of like stagnant. I'm like, oh, they might come back later this fall. We might have
right,
festivals back, and you know, just time goes on, and reality just started to set in, and I'm like, okay, am I just gonna sit here, or
right,
am I gonna go make something happen?
right.
And then 2020 became, I'm like, all right, well, how much can I? Kind of became a game to me. It's like, how much can I do this year with
hmm
this downtime? You know, and at the end of the year, I just can't wait to say, you know, hey, I went and got my health back.
You
I
bought a
I
house.
bought a house, you know, I got my real estate license. I learned Adobe programs and how to operate those on a basic level, which a skill set I really needed the last few years. Signed 3 new artists. and the list can go on there. Became a notary. I'm an ordained minister now, just little fun ones on the side too. But yeah, it really just became a game of how much can I get done this year?
Yeah.
And I can't wait to go to 2021 knowing that, hey, I invested, I gave myself a few extra, you know, tools on the Swiss Army knife, as I like to call it. And, now I'm pandemic proof, I'm recession proof, and anything heading forward into 2021 with my projects. So now if a pandemic comes again, I have a couple online businesses I'm working on that where I'm not going to be worried if the event space goes away now. I have a real estate license where I can go jump into that on the back end and not be worried.
I think if anything, it's just like being able to rely on yourself and not need to rely on anybody else.
Yes.
Huge, huge, huge
And I
lesson.
think that was the lesson. That was the biggest lesson I took away from 2020 because the events go, I'm like, oh, wow, I guess I needed that.
Yeah.
And now it became okay. Well, there's some holes in the boat here because
Mhm.
I'm not pandemic proof, and who knows if we hit one ever again in our lifetime, and they predict we will. And I just want to now I'm ready,
Yeah.
and I can take. The goal is just to be able to take care of myself and the people around me at that point.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think, I mean, I got a girlfriend this year. This is my first long-term relationship ever, and
Yeah.
I've said it multiple times on the podcast, more than likely the girl I'm going to end up marrying. But that changed a lot of my perspectives about how I wanted to operate my life and what systems I wanted to have in place.
Hmm.
Because, like when you have someone else to care for and someone else to think about when you're making decisions
Hmm.
on a day-to-day basis, it really does change
Oh,
your
absolutely,
outlook on things. So
absolutely.
for me, it became one of those things where I was like, look, if Ziza can become something that I can take on the road with me and go anywhere I
Which you
want to
did.
go, and exactly, and I really just wanted something where in the future I have a family I know I can take care of based
Hmm.
on something that I built years and years ahead of time. And it's not something where like, okay, if we need to move somewhere because she needs to get a job somewhere else, it's not going to be
Hmm.
difficult for me to pick up and move everything over.
Yeah, of course.
So it was really thinking about the dynamics of a future in that kind of career field.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? What are
while it being
you,
something that you're passionate
while
about.
it being something that you're passionate about, right? And it takes a lot of thought to like really buckle down on something that's gonna fulfill all of your different needs for what you
Mhm.
want to be able to do in your future. So
Yeah.
I think keeping those kinds of things, keeping your family, keeping your future in
Mhm.
mind is super important, and it complicates everything that much
And
more.
one of our favorite books, Think and Grow Rich,
Right.
I talked about. I think you actually just posted a quote about it really recently. I
This
saw,
morning.
yeah. So
Yep.
there we go, perfect. It talks about when you do have that partner behind you, how much more psychologically it can empower you forward to go and
Hmm.
accomplish those things. Because again, when we go away from human logic of self-preservation, I need to strive, which is ingrained in us psychologically, instead to I need to provide, I need to take care of the people I'm around for. Then your intention and action start to go different.
Right.
I always think back to when I was playing in baseball. I had a guy on my team from the Dominican Republic, and I think I've told you this story.
You
I'd
definitely have.
I'd stay after practice and run 10 sprints, and he'd stay after and run 12. I'd run 3 laps around the field. He'd run four, and he'd make sure I beat him every time. And finally, I went to talk to him, and he asked me, he goes, "Why do you play baseball?" And I'm like, "Oh, "I'm playing my whole life. My dad played professionally. All the what's." And he goes, "I got to put food on the table for my family." And I went, holy crap. And I'm like, how am I supposed to match that mindset? And I literally had to start training and lie to myself to convince myself that if I like my family's not going to eat if I don't go train as hard as I can today. And I thought I was working hard before that.
Yeah.
Again, it's amazing when you have other people relying on you, what it brings out of you. And I think that was what happened to me with Octave at one point is I became so focused on making sure everyone else was, getting their bookings, getting their value of what they wanted to learn, getting connected to who they wanted to get. I got so caught up in that, and it's tough because you lose sight of some of the pain points and things you're going through, especially as an entrepreneur, which is a very lonely, lonely journey at some points.
Right.
And getting to that mentally and still keeping the people around me at the focus was really draining at a couple points, but I'm glad I stuck through it because it ultimately paid the biggest reward.
Right, and you're holding the emotional burden of people who are putting time, investing their
Mhm.
time into something that you're building,
Mhm.
right? And ultimately not getting paid for it at the time too. So
Mhm.
you're like, okay, I really want to make sure that the time they're giving me is going to be worth
I
their
have
while.
to do
So
it. And that's the biggest thing. If I were to go back and talk to everyone who was involved in that first startup with Octave, I just hope I can go back to all of them and say, hey, did you get some sliver of value out of this? Or what did
right,
you learn from it? Or go from it. And I think for the most part, I've done that. And I've really, even after Octave ended, I tried to use my resources to give other people opportunities still. You even come and worked with me at a few festivals.
that was a really really big one. So I
Yeah.
know you got chastised quite a bit when you made the decision
Yeah.
that you made. And rightfully so from some of the
Of
people who
course.
did
Yeah.
choose to chastise you for that. I
Of course.
understand where they were coming from 100%. However, it wasn't like you just up and left and ditched all of the people that were around you at the time when you were working on Octave.
Yeah.
You really did, at least from my perspective, what I can see how I felt. You really did give effort to trying to make sure that you were still supporting those people that were there and helping you
Yeah.
throughout Octave's time. So
And I'm lucky to say I still work with a lot of those people on a
right,
number of different projects. Even when we went
right,
out to Los Angeles the other week with everything, there's a few Octave people there and
right.
people that really built that project still coming and being involved.
Right. And I think it's important to recognize that, a lot of people took relationships that they wouldn't have had prior. They wouldn't have had at all had they
Oh
not been
yeah.
involved with that. You know what I
Oh
mean? There's a lot of
yeah.
friendships that were cultivated,
Well, and
a lot of
there's so much versatility and variety of
so
people. Like
much.
the background diversity on Octave was what really propelled it so far because we had so many different people from walks of life
Right.
all working together on a common goal.
Right.
Imagine if we could take that and empower it forward in so many other aspects of the world.
I wish I know we said this multiple times when we were working on Octave, but I wish there was a camera crew that followed us around for that. At least the first year.
Yeah.
That first year was crazy.
Yeah, it was. I
So I don't know, man. There's a lot to learn from experiences like that. And let's move into the topic of failure. Because
my favorite.
yeah, I mean, there is so much to have, like, for all of us to have learned from the first, let's say 20 failures that came out of Octave, that came out of Inspire, that came out of a lot of the artists.
Yeah.
A lot of the artists that were working with Octave had to make huge shifts in that time
Oh
period
yeah.
because they realized what they were doing was not working.
It's
It
not gonna
wasn't
work.
gonna go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, all of us had experienced failure in that time period.
Mhm.
All of us learned how to deal with failure and
Yeah.
learn what it meant. And we all kind of supported each other through understanding what failure was and dealing
Mhm.
with that failure. I
And
know
I
for me, it was really difficult at certain points in time. You had to help me with that process.
yeah.
Chop had to help me with that process.
And
So,
it was really big. The one of the biggest things I think helped make Octave go, and what I took away from a leadership role in that point was allowing people to fail,
yeah,
being okay with it, and going back and reattacking and looking at a different perspective of, hey, how can we be better? What do we need to improve on here? So many times I think people that are in leadership positions, they are afraid to delegate because, like, well, what if they fail? Well, good. Once they go fail, then they got it out of the way. Now if it becomes a repetitive pattern, that's different,
that's when you deal with it
but
differently.
allow someone to go fail because that's the best experience and teacher you're going to give them beyond any words you're going to tell them, because
Right.
when they go do it and they have the aha and go, oh, that's where I went wrong, they understand to avoid that step next time going through more times than not. And sometimes, to be honest, even a weird leadership, I would put people in positions where I knew they were going to fail because I knew it would teach them the lesson that would help us a year from now, that would help us 6 months from now. One of my favorite things we ever did was the first splashdown we ever threw. I can't tell you how many things we failed on and went wrong and how stressful it was, but that was our first time setting up an outdoor event from scratch.
And we tried to put a live stream together
And we
for
tried
it
to
at
put
the
a
same
live stream
time.
at
That
the
was
same
crazy.
time. And I just threw a lot at the team, but I knew if we could all work together and figure out how to get it done, which we did,
Mhm.
everything else after that, it's like we started to get to these bigger and bigger events that we were setting up and go like, oh, we've done that before. We've been in this position, even if it was smaller.
There were even points in time where you were talking about, like, hey, we're gonna do like an event a week. And I was one of the people fighting you on that. I was like, Jason, I don't think we're ready for that. I don't think this is something we need to do. And you just went full force with it and it worked.
hmm
It worked.
And I think at that, I was just like, it was a different business model for me than something like Ziza, where you're sitting here fine tuning quality assurance and all that. Like,
Right.
I think just in that industry, this is just a different parallel,
Hmm.
And for me, it was about consistency and persistency were where I really led.
Right.
I think more times than not, people on the team would go, hey, this isn't quality enough to put out. And I'm sitting there going, perfect is the enemy of done.
Right.
Let's get done and let's just keep growing and growing and we'll get better on the next one because it's never going to end.
Right. To you, it was more like, let's get this out so that way we can figure out what we need to do better next time
Yes.
and then do it next
Yeah.
time.
And then do it next time.
Right.
Exactly. And
Right.
that was a big growth model for him. And again, just different parallels of business there and projects, of course, too.
Yeah. So what is it you would tell someone who's looking to make a leap into the music industry right now
Yeah.
amidst all this craziness
I
coming out?
mean,
What are you going to tell them?
you'd be surprised. I've been getting resumes and emails
Really?
throughout the year. Yeah, I've had this year more than others. I can't tell you how many kids I've had reach out to me like, "Hey, is Relentless hiring or getting
Mhm.
to?" And I'm like, "No, not really. We're we're pretty slow right now." So it's always tough, but I think the biggest thing is just getting started. I like to have people that reach out to me and go, well, hey, I have this project called Moon Landing. You can start writing articles, seeing how the label side of things work, how media works, how we do our advertising, and just being on a team that is in the music space. It's an unpaid role, and it's a group of people who just love dance music. And anyone who wants to work with me, I put them on that project first. One, to make sure they can work within a team sphere, because if you can't work on a team, then there's no part of us that's ever going to be able to work together,
Right.
because I build everything off teams, and that's just my style. And getting involved. There's tons of little collectives out there and groups. Go find your way into one. You found your way into one completely on accident.
Yeah.
But the people are out there. Go write a blog. Start writing about dance music. Just share what you believe, and
Right.
guess what? You go put that out. If one person reads it and goes, you know what, I believe that too, and I want to do that. Well, hey, there now we got the conversation started, which is the thing you're driving toward, is you're getting conversation started this year. So when you go preach what you believe in the world, not just what you want, you're going to attract others who believe what you believe. And then the conversation starts. And once that conversation starts, now you have multiple perspectives and ideas, and that's where things can build and form from. So I think really promoting yourself out there, talking about what you believe, whatever you're passionate about is in the music world, whether it's artist management or anything, and just connecting with people who are doing the things you want to do, and go learn from them, because they went through a slew of failures that, could save you a lot of time, energy, and efforts.
And as an artist manager,
hmm
what have you recognized has been more difficult than you anticipated for your artists to deal with?
in
Mhm.
COVID this year, it's just keeping the working with their managing emotions,
Mm.
honestly, has been the biggest thing, because they're all really talented people, and creatives and artists, just they think a very different way than I do. And
They put
that's
their
why.
heart on the sleeve too. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a different way and just different personality type than what I am. And
Right.
that's why I really think that's why artist management's been at the forefront of what I do, because I really complement that with having such a different personality and perspective of how I take things on. Just reiterating, trusting the process. Hey, this is a downtime. You can't control it. I can't control it. I can relate and empathize, because guess what? I lost everything too this yeyear.
Right.
But the greatest thing is, I looked at all my artists, and they all wrote some of the best music of their lives this year. And we're just sitting on it, and I cannot wait. But I can honestly say every single artist I work with has wrote an absolute hit due to COVID and the mentality and the circumstance that it brought upon all of them. And I think all of those songs are going to be incredibly valuable when we come out of this.
And you're with 5 artists now? 4 or 5? 5 artists now.
5. So I was working with Ekanova and Rel coming into 2020, and I'd been working with Ekanova for 3 years now prior to that, and Rel about a year prior to that. In March, right before COVID hit, I started working with Bella Renee, a vocalist who's also been on the podcast,
She's
and
gonna win a Grammy.
she's gonna win a Grammy. That's pretty much anyone that asks anything, she's gonna win a Grammy. Right after that, in June this year, I signed Tidy, who's also been on the podcast.
100%.
And that was really cool, because, for the first time, I had a world global touring act that had 2 number 1 hits on Billboard in the
He's been
last
there,
days.
he's done it. Yep.
Yeah, he's really done it. And he came out to me and said, hey, I really, I want to work with you. I like the way you carry yourself. And I think that was a testament to me. Instead of, like a lot of other managers, taking a break during COVID, I
Mhm.
doubled down my time, energy, and efforts. And
Right.
again, I bought in while the stock's low. So when we hit the boom in the music industry, it's going to come to pay dividends for me next year, in my opinion. And all my artists, like a lot of managers were going to their artists this year and saying, "Hey, if you want to keep working with me this year, I'm going to need an advance." I
Right.
can't tell you how many artists have come to me and said their manager go, "I need an advance to keep doing this." And I look at that, I'm like, you're not in it for the right reasons.
You're
You're
really
not.
not,
You're not in
yeah.
it for the love. I'm not going to go ask someone who's hurting to help me just because I'm hurting. Hey, let's hurt together, but let's work together.
Right.
And
Let's feed off of each
we'll
other with
take
that,
this
yeah.
hurt from what we lost this year, and you know what? When it comes back, we're going to be good, and we just got to be patient and trust that that process is going to pay off. And then as of last week, I just started working with Ryan Shepard, who just dropped "Hello Sunday" last Friday, which, beyond being a manager, as a fan, is one of my favorite songs I have ever heard. And to say that is like, I can go into a lot of tracks like, hey, I'm a manager. I like the strategy behind the song. It's going to fit well here and all this.
Right.
And, every once in a while, my artists do some of those songs where, as a fan, I'm like, Oh my
You're
god.
like, "This is a bop."
And Hello Sunday is just that. And what Ryan actually did, which is a really cool story, he started doing these Hello Sunday live stream parties
Mhm.
throughout COVID. And his goal was to play really powerful, uplifting, positive music to empower people during a tough time. He actually went on to raise over like $20,000 for charity with this Hello Sunday live stream over the course he ran it. And we just got featured on the Toronto news in Canada there
Is
with
he from he's from
he's
Canada?
from Toronto.
Okay,
Yeah, he went on tour with Loud Luxury up there. He's got one track that did like 35 million streams with them, which is pretty cool.
that's crazy.
So he's got a good background, and he came to me and goes, "Hey, I really need a presence in the States, and I need someone that's going to hustle and figure out how to do that for me." And I'm like, "I'm your guy." And but he wrote Hello Sunday because like I needed a song to put in those sets that's really positive, uplifting, and he kind of wrote it in just the midst of quarantine and the pandemic. And it's just one of the most positive, uplifting songs. And it's about starting that week and having a chance to be better by going and focusing on yourself.
Right.
So
Has it been weird working with artists who have more experience in the music industry than you do?
that's a great question. Yeah. Cause I mean, as of this week, I think it was this week on Thursday, I had walked out of Global 4 years ago. It was my
Right.
second festival ever. And that was the night I walked out of the gates and said, I am going to work in the music industry. And, I'm very happy to say 4 years later, I
You did that.
I did that, and I'm
Yeah.
still here doing it, even in the face of harsh times. And everything I did during that climb even prepared me for now. Just understanding that it's not going to be fair, and you just got to work your way around it. Um, but it's been tough to say the least.
But again, what is it like having artists that you manage
Yeah,
who have more experience than you in the music
it's
industry?
good because I can learn and I can still add a fresh perspective of someone who was just a fan running
Uh,
around the festivals 2 or 3 years ago.
right.
That's something that I think is an advantage to me. I choose to look at it like that because hey, I was the kid running around the festivals just 2 years ago, and I can tell you what I think the kids are listening to these days. And I think the longer you're in the music industry, and it's slowly started to happen to me, you just get a little disconnected from
The
the
fan
fan
side being
side and
right.
having that experience. And like the only time I get that experience now, I used to get it going to all the Relentless festivals. Now I got an earpiece in and I'm making sure things don't go on fire, just like you are there helping me
Yeah.
on site.
Carry around a bucket of water all day.
Yeah, exactly. And I really get those experiences when I go to out of state festivals now. So I still have them and get them, but you just naturally grow away from that's just part of joining it because you're working it.
Yeah.
But God, it's been beyond valuable because that's my greatest strength about coming into the music industry. And just in 4 years is when I came in, I had the concept and understanding and self-awareness to go, I know nothing.
Right.
So therefore I have the chance to learn
Everything.
everything.
Right.
And that simple acceptance of self-awareness and decision to educate and learn has what has propelled me to getting to the point where, hey, even though I may not have the experience, I at least have the knowledge, hustle, and work ethic to attract someone with that experience to want to still come work with me.
Right.
But God, I can't even tell you the amount like international like things I've learned in the last like international bookings, visas, just major record deals and how that world works up. I mean, just the contracts and backside inner workings of music and artists, and honestly, just learning how to work with different personalities. It's different when you have a kid who like Ekanova who's been there the whole time and just figuring it out like you have compared to having Tidy's come on. He's already done it,
Right.
and but I still need to sit here and come up with we're heading into the second leg of his career very much. And I need to figure out, hey, okay, well, you did it for 10 years. How do we do it for another 10?
Right.
And
Right.
so I have a younger, fresh perspective, I think, to kind of come on and play that to the current state of the industry.
Right. And
Mhm.
to say that, Ekanova on his first leg, Tidy on his second leg, two very different strategies going to this.
Absolutely.
How are you dealing with the conflict that you have between your artist and yourself? So, because obviously, you're not going to agree 100% on everything. I'm sure your artists have said, "Yeah, Jason, I don't know about that one," and you've been like, "Yeah, I don't know about that one" from you.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
what is your strategy behind dealing with the conflicts that you come into with your
Well,
artists?
I learned this from Octave and dealing with the team members when I had a different conflict. And this is the strategy I've used for anyone with conflict.
Right.
And the great thing about my artists and I is we all, no matter what happens, we all have the same goal.
Right.
So I always tie to that. This is our common ground. You want to succeed at this. I want you to succeed at this. And we're going to work together. Now, we may have two different ways of getting there,
Mhm.
but you have to understand that we are both working toward the same thing. So once you can establish that, hey, that's that common ground, it's a lot easier to go in to have that conversation because you both want the same outcome.
Right.
You just have a different route of getting there. And some people can say it's, compromise or whatever it is. Like sometimes there's not compromise. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is going to be a really bad PR move if you do
If you
this,
do it, right.
and we'll go. And there's other times where, again, just like I did on Octave, like I have to let my artist go and say, this is your project, this is your blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm giving as much of my blood, sweat, and tears here too. But you have to live with this, and it's your brand. And I've let them go forward a couple times against my advice, and it failed and didn't work. And guess what? Sometimes it has worked. And I hope if it goes that way, I'm like, I hope you tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And then the other times it's not. I'm like, okay, well, hey, we got to go back to the drawing board. We got to retweak. We got to fine tune. We got to fix this. And this is how it needs to go out next time.
And there's no
So
ego involved with
not at
whatever,
all.
right?
So either, if you don't want to go that route, then hey, I'm going to let the experience will teach us. And that's going to be the ultimate judge anyway.
Right.
You can't be the judge and I can't be the judge. The experience and what culminates from that will be the judge at the end of the day.
Right.
And that's again, just going back to trusting the process. So differences are going to come no matter what organization you work with. Establish common ground, and that's just the understanding of, if you are working with those people in general, is you should have the same goal.
Right.
Now if you have a conflict and the goals are different, you have a much deeper core issue.
How do you deal with that one?
Usually you don't. um,
Usually you part your ways and
usually
find someone who
you,
does have the same
you
goal as
do.
you.
There's
Right.
7.8 billion people in the world.
Right.
It's like, that's like finding a partner you're going to spend your life with or work on something every day with, and saying, hey, you're working toward a completely different picture than I am.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It
Right.
just does not align. And again, figuring out who we are is eliminating what we are not.
Right.
So when you see those things, whether you're working with partners, like, that does not align with the person and mission that I am becoming. And when you have that conviction and belief that this is the route and direction, you just don't accept it, in my opinion. And it's a very I'm binary, black and white in some ways, but that's a very binary thing, and there's people who are going to come and fit, and there's just people who aren't. And that's just the reality of the world.
Yeah, and dude, I guess that's a lesson I kind of learned this year. There were a lot of different projects, obviously having lost my job early on in the year, that
Mhm.
I tried to get myself into other small businesses that my friends were running and were successful with. And little by little you realize, like, maybe we were friends for a reason, but I don't think our business goals or our life goals kind of align. And that was a tough lesson for
It's
me to
it,
learn.
it's a tough lesson to learn for sure, and it's a good realization. And then again, it just comes down to the core understanding of self awareness.
Yeah.
And until you went and tried that thing, you couldn't have the awareness to realize it from that perspective. But and that's all life is it's a constant gaining of understanding self.
Yeah.
And like you said, over a year we've changed so much, and through that change, you have to continue to understand yourself and educate yourself on yourself, almost, in a sense. And the more things we go through, the more people we work with, the more types of personalities we meet, that's when we're really able to figure those things out.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's been a crazy year to say the least. There's a
To
lot
say
of
the least.
learning going on. I think that was the prime focus, even though
Yeah.
schools still
I,
aren't
I think
in
that's the
session.
biggest thing is I'm excited to see at the end of the year who comes out and goes, hey, I learned how to do X, Y, and Z. Hey, I started this. I think, again, I think 2020, when we look back on it, for the people that doubled down and put their time in, they're going to look back as like one of the biggest years of their life. And,
They may not see those results like in 21
no, not at
either. It might
all.
come 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But
Mhm.
I think when people do start, tasting the fruits of their labor, they're going to be like, damn, a lot of that groundwork was put in
Mhm.
that downtime in
And
2020.
that's exactly the mindset I chose to attack this year. I did hit
Yeah.
a moment of self kind of lull there at first. Like you said, I was lost.
Yeah.
And, I've never really had times in my life where I've been lost. From 3 to 23, I wanted to play professional baseball. Okay. Baseball ends. Now I had 2 months in corporate America, and then I go to my first music festival.
Right.
So I've only really had 2 months in my entire life where I can honestly say I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
It's a bit of an anomaly in that case. But once I figured it out, you just got to dive in and go all at it.
I feel like you're just a freight train, though. You know what I mean? Like you come to a few different tracks, and you kind of just pull the lever, and you just freight train right on through it. You just go straight.
My VP at Relentless told me that the same thing the other day. He's
There
like,
you
you
go.
just dive in and go all in what you do. I'm like, well, yeah. Once you make up your mind, again, you have to eliminate everything that doesn't align with
You're
that.
like, toss some more coals in the fire. Let's go head on.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
fast can we get this thing going?
Oh yeah, you're like, I'll get back to that divergence, and if I need to redirect next time, I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, and if I got to go back a few miles on the track, so what?
Yeah.
There's the working smarter than harder. I definitely kind of am just more on the work harder side. Sometimes it's not always the smartest approaches I take, but
Got to know yourself how you work well too. So that it plays
it is.
plays
And
that part
and
too.
I know my thing is like, if I just crazy chip away at it as much as I can every single day, I compare it to a graph. Like, you just just got to move the needle a little bit
Right.
every single day. Even if that's only investing 15 minutes into yourself that day, you're having a rough day. Maybe you don't want to go work on your passion or project, or you're just feeling uninspired. Just do something for 15 to 30 minutes.
Read a book for 15
That's
minutes at
gonna help.
minimum. Yeah.
Yeah, at minimum, just
Yeah.
one little thing. Go, okay, well, today I wasn't a complete waste.
Right.
And the more, again, it's the little things that add up over time that culminate the big picture.
Last but not least, actually, this is something that we talked about like last week because I was having a bit of a difficult time with
Yeah, I
some.
think I gave you a call.
You did. I was
Yeah.
having a difficult time with some life situations, kind of feeling overwhelmed with everything going on, and
Hmm.
family and things like that. Take care of yourself. Really,
Yes.
really, 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 really take care of yourself. Like do what you need to do to make sure that you are not pouring out of an empty glass, which is the
Hmm.
exact analogy that we used on that conversation.
Yeah.
Super important. Super
Yeah.
important. What do you have to say about how you've taken care of yourself over the last
That
couple
was the
months?
hardest thing to learn out of everything. And once I started to take care of myself, my mental health, my self development, everything else stemmed from there. At first, one big thing that really got me into it was in 2017 when I started the first company. The day I started that, I started a journal.
Mm,
And I have documented every page of the inner workings of my mind, all the relationships and everything. And it is documented in a journal and to be able to go back 3 years ago and read what I was going through at the time and look directly into my mind, I can immediately see the growth.
right.
And it's a reminder. And I look back and go, wow, I was worrying about that 3 years ago.
Mm,
And I look at it today and just go, like that would be nothing right now compared to the problems I take on. And because, the problems we take on get bigger and bigger as we get closer to actualizing our dreams, you know, they become a lot harder and you get tested. You get tested more toward the actualization of your dream than you do at the beginning, even though the beginning seems like,
you're like it's a blessing to have bigger problems. It's that weird
yeah,
that weird analogy right there.
it is. Well, because then you have to become stronger to solve them. And once you gain that strength and that experience, then solving everything else becomes bigger.
Right.
And, you start to figure out, okay, well, what are our limits? And the only way to know our limits is to constantly test our limits.
Right.
It's the only way we can figure those things out.
Just keep tapping on the glass.
Absolutely.
You got one camera there. You got one camera there.
Oh, geez.
If you have anything you want to share, I know, like you said, you've talked about a lot of projects, Hustle Theory, Connect. You have Moon Landing, which you're kind of a part of.
Kind of a part.
Kind of a part of. You do the help side, kind of letting Chop take the reins on that one.
Yeah.
If there's anything you want to let people know about that you have coming up that you're really excited about, or anything, that's the pressing matter in your mind at the
Yeah.
moment, talk to the camera, let them know what you got going on.
I'm just excited for life right now. I'm excited to take care of my health, my self development, and all of those things. And those are my focus right now. I've really gotten back into exercise this year and just wellness, journaling, meditating, and I don't need to promote any of my projects. I want to promote that to people.
Love that.
Go promote taking care of yourself. Go focus on your well being, and fill your cup up, because when it's full, no matter what's happening in the world, you can go and help someone else.
You always have a little bit more access that you can
Just
kind of
just
sprinkle
to
out there,
just to
help other
give.
people.
And
Right.
again, when you give is when you get in the long run. So go fill yourself up this year so you can go empower and help others.
That's my goal. I want to make sure my cup is overflowing now. I've
Yes.
been running a little bit low lately, so I'm trying to overflow the cup so I can really give
And
to
you
other
know
people.
exactly what you need to do
Yeah.
to get yourself in position. And so does everyone else out there. We know the things we need to do to take care of ourselves. It's fighting human emotion and going logically, I need to do this to become the best version of myself so I can help others.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for coming by.
Hey.
It's an early morning. That's why we
It
got the
is.
coffee around. But hey,
Yeah.
you guys know how it is here at Ziza. You guys have a new episode every single Friday. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. We're real close to 100 subscribers,
it.
and we've got some cool stuff to share with you guys once we do hit 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
But again, thank you guys all for watching, for listening. If you're listening to the podcast, Jason, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And I'm so